Errol Spence vs. Manny Pacquiao is guaranteed to be one of the biggest fights of the year, even though most fans didn't really see it coming. It's a familiar narrative, the famed legend in the twilight of his career versus the hungry young champion trying to create his own legacy. So how will these two fighters' styles match up technically? The first thing we have to acknowledge is that both of these fighters are Southpaws. This matters because most of the typical counters and combinations that each fighter throws against orthodox fighters are going to be executed slightly differently. For example, when a Southpaw faces an orthodox fighter, their stance is mirrored, so the lead hands tend to run into each other. Fighters often paw with the lead hand to occupy the opponent's jab, parrying and knocking it down to create space for punches. Pacquiao's jabs are usually a throwaway used to put his orthodox opponents on the back foot and set up his straight left hand. Manny also loves to counter an orthodox jab by slipping his head to the right and landing the left before getting a side angle.
How is he gonna be fighting against a southpaw? You know, as a southpaw, you have the blind spot that he goes to constantly. That's the thing, is that there's no angle. The angle is if I'm coming this way, the angle is here.
Right.
He drops the straight right down the middle to the body, to the head, with the jab over. An angle. Here, you can't really do that.
When fighters have the same stance, however, the avenue for the jab is much more open for both of them down the middle. If we mirror the fighters, they suddenly look like two ordinary orthodox fighters jabbing normally. Against David Diaz, one of the only other southpaws Pacquiao has faced, we saw him relying on a stiff jab much more often, both as a scoring punch and as a setup shot. When Diaz jabbed, Pacquiao was also able to counter with his right hook more flush than usual.
You see right here, you see Pacquiao throwing his right hook, something that he can't normally do when he's fighting a standard right-handed fighter, and he seems to love it. That's been his pet punch so far most of the fight.
It's been a long time since you fought another southpaw, and it looked as though you were more able to use your brilliant right hand, that hook and the uppercut in this fight against the southpaw than even against conventional fighters. Did you know coming in that would be the case?
Well, I tell you the truth. It's hard to fight a southpaw, and that's why I'm not very confident in this fight. You know, I'm just have my defense and jab a lot.
But Pacquiao is going to have a problem competing with Spence's jab. Unlike Manny, Spence uses his much longer jab as an essential part of his style, even against his orthodox opponents. He can throw it to set up the left, throw it with speed, and often uses it to control the head of his opponent.
How frustrating was that jab?
Look, like I said, he came out here to execute a game plan, kept the distance at his favor, his reach, his height, and the southpaw stance complicate things.
The battle of the jabs is key because it partially answers the question of who will control the distance. Spence masterfully utilizes the reach to hit an opponent without being vulnerable himself, which is key to halting Manny's explosive attacks. If he can't consistently get close enough, then Pacquiao simply can't maximize those dangerous combinations. That being said, Pacquiao has footwork and speed that Spence won't have ever seen before, so controlling the distance won't be easy. As Keith Thurman learned in the first round, Pacquiao closes the distance deceptively quickly. An opponent might relax thinking they're out of harm's way, only for Pacquiao to appear suddenly. Now, unlike Thurman, Spence usually exits the pocket more safely, ducking down after he throws a shot and keeping his chin tucked. But this guard is not totally impenetrable at close quarters. Sean Porter used feints and his own quick feet to close the distance and throw combinations at awkward angles, including left hands from a southpaw stance and southpaw right hooks. Since Spence keeps his right hand low when he's not jabbing, Manny can attack this position after Spence is ducked down. while Spence will try to counter it with his own shoulder roll. But another key difference to many of Pacquiao's past opponents is that Spence will almost certainly cut the ring off effectively and push Manny on the back foot. And unfortunately for Manny Pacquiao, he can't really fight backing up. Part of this is down to Pacquiao's feet, which square up and compromise his balance when he's pressed backwards. In many rounds, Thurman showed us that Pacquiao can be forced backwards consistently, forcing him to shell up with his offense neutralized and his body exposed. Boxing fans often like to praise Pacquiao's performance in this fight, which is of course deserved, but this dynamic of Pacquiao getting repeatedly bullied and beat up seems to get left out of the narrative when people describe what happened in this fight. When Spence decides to really push forward, he doesn't let up, and is even able to switch stances while advancing in order to keep his momentum. This makes it really difficult to escape his pressure. In order to prevent getting relentlessly pressed, Manny should really capitalize on the moment when Spence first starts his attack. Spence often takes a wide step forward to close the distance and stretch that jab, and sometimes overcommits while doing so, since this big step requires his back foot to drag while catching up with the front foot. Spence is usually unprepared to punch effectively when caught like this. So with Spence pressing and Pacquiao firing back, we're guaranteed fireworks. But whose skills will prevail? Will it be Spence's size, jab, and pressure, or Manny's speed and suddenness? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and click on that notification bell. And if you want to see more of these breakdown videos, you can make a donation on Patreon, because this video editing software is not free. Thanks for watching, guys.